Well, the investigation of Charlie Kirk is under attack. That's right, it's under attack. But the question is, will it impact the trial of the suspected shooter? Well, we're going to talk about this, a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crime Buster. It's what some people are calling, well, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crime Buster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello, welcome to another episode of Charlie Crime Buster. Hey, we've been taking about a 2-week break in our podcast, as some of you have probably already noticed, and some of you have contacted us about it. We're all well, everything's good. We just had to take a little break and kind of focus in on some work that we have been doing in the security area. So we're right back at it though, and we appreciate all the fine comments from all you folks who said you've missed the podcast, and we will get you caught right up on this episode. You know, for some reason, the Charlie Kirk shooting stays in the news. But in my opinion, it's not really a good way. You see, there is a very unique attack upon this crime investigation. Now, not from the defense attorney of the alleged shooter, but actually from a social media frenzy led by a social media influencer and influencers. But the real question is, how will this unique attack affect the upcoming trial of one of the most talked about political assassinations in history? And we're going to get right into that topic in a moment.
The following podcast is brought to you by PeacemakerNetwork.com. PeacemakerNetwork.com. Audio is provided by Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com.
But first, let me welcome you who are a part of the podcast today. Those of you who have joined the Charlie Crime Train, we call it. We always appreciate new listeners. And if you are a new listener or you're a seasoned listener, we always invite you to reach out with a shout out. You can reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. You can also check your particular social platform for other podcasts that will be released. Hey, do me a favor, hit that like button, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That way, every time we have a new podcast dropped, you will be informed and be right up on top of the topic. So we do invite you to do that. Again, if you'd like to reach out with a shout out, reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. This will probably be the last podcast of this year because we have a new year coming. So let me just say thank you for all of you who have joined us in this past year. A special thank you to our producer, James Buckland. And as you may or may not know, James and I we have not monetized this podcast. We're not making any money off the podcast in any way, fashion, or form. We're simply doing this because we hope we're doing a service to others, and we quite frankly enjoy doing it. So let me and James take a moment to thank you for all of the wonderful things that you've said and done in this past year for the Charlie Crime Buster podcast. And let me encourage you to join with us in 2026, as once again, Charlie Crime Buster will be there to keep you informed on crime as it is happening. All right, let's get right into today's program. In September of 2025, while on stage at a Utah Valley University TPUSA event, that's Turning Point USA, it was called the American Comeback Tour. And Charlie Kirk, the guy who founded this organization, was fatally shot in the neck. Now, that shooting took place about 12:23 p.m. by the MDT time, and it was around 20 minutes after the event began, and it was in front of an audience of about 3,000 people. Now, Kirk was swept up by his security team taken and rushed to a regional hospital in critical condition. And later that afternoon, he was pronounced dead. Now, authorities arrested the suspected shooter. He was a 22-year-old young man by the name of Tyler James Robinson. And they arrested him in Washington, Utah on September the 12th. 4 days later, on September the 16th, he was charged. Charges was aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 2 counts of witness tampering, and the commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child. Now, on December the 11th, this young man made a first in-person appearance in court, and he was brought before the judge. Now, we've already reported on this horrific shooting and the shooter. You can go to your podcast platform and you can pick it up from there. But since then, what appeared to be an open and shut case, well, it became the path of clickbait for several influencers on social media. In fact, it has been said that one particular influencer, Candace Owen, has been riding the bumper of Charlie Kirk's hearse all the way to the top podcasts in the nation. And she's been doing that by accusing just about everyone she can imagine for the death of her so-called quote-unquote friend, Charlie Kirk. And despite the fact that law enforcement officials have a very strong case for the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson. So the question today that we want to face on this particular podcast is, how will these off-the-wall so-called accusations from Candace Owen and others, how will it really impact the real trial of Tyler Robinson? Or will it impact it at all? So in order to get down to the nitty-gritty, as we say often on the podcast, let's talk about some of these false accusations that Owens and others are putting out there on social media. And let's see how it's going to impact the real case of the alleged shooter. One of the first things that Candace has said, and is getting a lot of traction by her millions of followers, is that the government, the United States government, is involved in this assassination, and that they are involved in the cover-up. She has actually implied that the federal government, well, first of all, she said they mishandled it, or they're concealing the truth about the investigation. She's even suggested that the text records and official details that they have released in this case are wrong or manipulated, and she's questioned why there is silence from particular pro-Israel voices on the investigation. Well, now, folks, you don't have to be, you don't even have to be around the block to realize that the easiest way to throw doubt on an investigation is to blame the feds. Folks, that's been happening since the day of moonshine. Well, the feds have always been a scapegoat. They've always been the bad guy. And believe me, my friend, me coming from a state where that such history originated, the hills of Tennessee, where moonshine run rampant, I do know that there is a basic distrust of the federal government. Well, Candace and other influencers, they know this, and they use it frequently to mask their followers. It is used to generate attention and engagement, and it positions the person who's saying, well, the government's rotten, the government's bad, the government lies. It always puts you in a position that you suddenly become the truth teller. And it does reinforce loyalty among your audiences, particularly if your audiences are already distrustful of institutions. And it is the easy way to encourage wild claims without corroboration. The fact that the investigation of Tyler Robinson, the fact is, it's not being led by the FBI. The FBI is a part of the investigation process. But it's not being led by the federal government. It's being led by state prosecutors, as it often happens in states in cases that they are working. And they do work jointly with the FBI and other local investigators in building their case. But it is very important now for us to point out something on this one area where she's throwing the federal government under the bus in the investigation of Charlie Kirk. And that is this. How many times have you ever heard this phrase? We are not commenting on an ongoing investigation. In fact, the FBI, in my opinion, was even incorrect in beginning to report on this particular tragedy by giving too much information already to the press and to other people. The real story often is, when you're involved in an investigation, is you do not comment on an ongoing investigation. You only release information if that information is needed in order to find a suspect. A good example is this last terrible shooting on this college at Brown University. They did begin to release information, but that information was released only because they needed to locate the suspect. They needed to find who did that terrible deed of killing those people. And so they release certain situations. Now, the reason why the government and the reason why investigators, even state and local investigators, do not release this information into the public is that they know that the investigation will be challenged in a court through a court procedure. That's the time to produce the evidence. Because when it is in that situation, there are rules of evidence. You see, Candace Owens and others who are influencers seem to think that they can take the place of the court, and they can demand certain answers in their own personal investigations. And when those answers do not come, they say, oh, you see? Oh, they've got to be hiding something. Why don't they answer what we're saying? Why don't they come out and put out their information right out here in the public? Why can't we all see it? Why can't we all have a part of it? And because the proper way of an investigation is not to release that information until they go to court, then suddenly the government becomes complicit in hiding stuff. Sometimes the government and the investigators, we should say, are not releasing that information because it hasn't yet been vetted. They have to look at it. They have to vet it. They have to know that the information that they're putting together for their investigation will pass the scrutiny of the court, where there are certain rules for such evidence to be presented to people. You see, my friend, anybody with a microphone online can accumulate followers by simply saying, I do not trust the government. The question, though, is, will the information stand up in the court of law? Think about it this way. Say your own loved one is shot and killed. Hopefully this will not be true in your life. But if so, how would you feel if the person that shot and killed your loved one was found with the weapon, with the so-called quote-unquote smoking gun, along with other evidence linking them to the place of the crime? A good case, a solid case. How would you feel if then the defense got up and tried to get that person off who killed your loved one, try to get them out of the guilty stage to a not guilty stage by simply saying, hey, we don't trust the government? Not trusting the government is not evidence. Not trusting the government is not a reason to simply state that the investigation is tainted. Every case involves good, decent, working investigators and law enforcement. And you cannot simply discount it because you do not trust the government. You see, my friend, Candace and others are generating clicks on the fact that people do not trust the government, and they are attacking the Charlie Kirk case with no real evidence to give you real reason not to trust the investigation. Now, there are additional ways that she's also attacking this investigation. We're going to get to that in a moment. But now is the time for us to take a moment, take a breath, and share with you what we call Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, my friend, our Crazy Crook story today comes from Seattle, Washington. And while we're talking about Seattle, Washington, we want to reach out with a shout out to one of our dear friends, Albert Bishop, who listens to us weekly there in Seattle, along with other people. We appreciate him so much, and so we're dedicating our Crazy Crook story this week to a Washington state person himself, a good dear friend, Albert Bishop. Thank God he wasn't the crazy crook in this story. But there was a guy who was just seen casually on video crossing a busy interstate, Interstate 5 in Seattle. Now, can you imagine it? You're just walking out there and the interstate cars going this way and that way. And while he's out there just walking casually across the Interstate 5, well, a Washington State Police Patrol car shows up. The guy stops in his track, paces around for a while, goes up to the driver's side of the door, and then literally yanks the cop out of the car. You see, my friend, he carjacks a state trooper. What kind of a person would carjack a state trooper? Well, a crazy crook for sure. Well, he opens the door, pushes her to the freeway pavement, then gets in behind the wheel and speeds off. This is actually a state lieutenant with the Washington State Police. Well, then, of course, an intense police pursuit ensures, and then we find out that eventually, as it happens, the bad guy gets caught, and the crazy crook ends up being in cuffs. So on December the 25th, a man in Seattle, he's certainly not on Santa's good list, he's on Santa's naughty list, and on December the 25th, he decides to carjack someone, but not just anyone. He carjacks a Washington State Patrol lieutenant. And he does it on pure video footage showing the man coming to the car. And then, of course, the footage also shows the police catching the guy, nabbing him, and taking him into custody. So this guy, who's high on meth and ends up having not so Merry Christmas, he ends up carjacking not just anyone, but carjacks a state police officer, is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. All right, let's get back to our main focus. We know that people are hijacking the Charlie Kirk story for their own self-gratification. We know that the investigation that the investigators are putting together, which is a strong case, is literally being carjacked, I guess we could say, as we talked about our crazy crook, by a lot of influencers. And they're saying a lot of things that are attacking the investigation. So the second thing that Candace and others are doing is not only saying that the federal government has something to do with it. Now, she is implying, along with that, that there are other foreign people involved in the killing of Charlie Kirk. She certainly initially is trying to cast doubt upon the investigation and trying to say that other countries are involved in this terrible, terrible shooting of this young man. And that includes Israel, France, and Egypt. She has floated unverified suggestions that foreign governments could be involved or had motives. And she does this, and she allegates that she's received information, first of all, tying French leaders to the assassination, and even claims, now get this, you got to hold on to your seat, she's not only saying that the French had something to do with Charlie Kirk being killed, but she's insinuating and claims that France wanted her killed as well. She says that she has linked now not only the French, but she's also linked Israeli influence on pro-Israel donors as a part of what she believes was pressure on Kirk, and that this had something to do with him being killed. She even has in her rhetoric, she's mentioned Egyptian planes as part of a larger narrative, again, without evidence. She publicly alleged that French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife, Brigitte Macron, orchestrated a plot to assassinate her, while also linking the French first couple to the killing of Charlie Kirk. Now, keep in mind, she had previously made headlines by claiming that the First Lady of France was, quote unquote, born male. No, you can't make this up, folks. And she said that also that a high-ranking employee of the French government had privately warned her about the alleged assassination plans 2 days earlier. She actually said that the French president and his wife executed upon and paid for her own assassination. But get this, she offers no evidence. But she says that she found the warning credible enough to reveal it publicly in the event that something happens. It was also turned over to the FBI. And then she says that Kirk's assassin trained with the French 13th Brigade. She escalated her claims and said that there was a connection between French intelligence and Charlie Kirk's killer. According to her, this anonymous government insider said that that particular killer had indeed trained with the France's elite 13th Legion. But hey, don't fret. If it's not France, then probably it was Israel. She's implied that Israel had a reason to take out Charlie Kirk. She's also somehow brought Egypt into it because she's tracking certain Egyptian planes that were in the region of Charlie Kirk. You know, as I've said before, it's almost like she and others are just throwing anything they can on the wall, hoping that something will stick. But my friend, the next area of her attack, I believe, is where she and others may have gone to a bridge too far. After accusing others with her tiptoe dance to her followers, accusing the U.S. government, accusing France, accusing Israel, accusing Egypt, she now throws undue suspicion on Charlie Kirk's own organization and even his own wife. All the time claiming that she is Charlie Kirk's dear friend. Well, my friend, as people have said, with friends like that, who needs enemies? She literally brings someone on her program who has a checkered past and has not been properly vetted to claim that he saw Charlie's wife, Erica, and others at a secret meeting with U.S. officials at an intelligence fort prior to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The implication is that they were planning the execution of Charlie Kirk, that his own wife was there present when they were planning the execution of Charlie Kirk. The problem about this is she is accusing people with no real evidence whatsoever. She hides behind the testimony of this guy with a tainted past, saying, well, that's what he said, so she can get out of it when it really becomes to the light that she has no idea what she's talking about, that these are ridiculous claims. She can easily back out and say, well, I didn't say they did it. This guy said he did it, but she brought him on her program, gave him the platform before millions of people to spout out information that's untrue and has accused innocent people, including Charlie Kirk's own wife, as having something to do with the assassination. And yet millions of people are following this, and some of them are buying it hook, line, and sinker. And there's a big deal right now in the conservative movement because there are two people, Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, who will not call out Candace Owens on these wild accusations. They refuse to do so, and they say now that they are being sought out, and people are saying bad things about them, that they do not support Israel, and that they are biased against Israel, and they're saying what a terrible thing that people think that they're biased about Israel, but they somehow do not seem to think that it's terrible that Candace Owens, in her own way, is accusing innocent people, including Charlie's own wife, as having a part of the assassination. So you see where this thing is going. But the question I am mentioning today, let's get out of the political part of this stuff, the political crap. I'm not interested in the political crap to talk about that, even though we've talked about that, because you need to know what's going on. What I want to point out today, how will these wild accusations affect the real case against Charlie Kirk Shooter? We do know that Tyler Robinson has been charged with the murder of Charlie Kirk. And we do know that there is strong evidence there. We do know that he was there. We do know that he is tied to the murder weapon. We do know that he sent texts claiming that he did this. We do know that he told others that he did this. We do know that he turned himself in. We do know that the investigators have a strong case against Tyler Robinson. No doubt about it. In my mind, they have a strong case. And no doubt in my mind, the alleged shooter is the guy who did this deed. But the question is, of all these wild speculations that Candace Owens and others are bringing to the forefront, will it impact the case? Will it taint the jury? Will it cause harm to the case? What do you think? Throwing all these outrageous things out, do you think it will really impact the case? Well, I don't think it will. I think that they are so wild, they are so out in left field, that any jury will see through this in a moment. Because you cannot bring just wild accusations to the court. There are rules of evidence. And I believe the jury will see straight through this. And I believe we're going to see that the officials are right. They have the right person. They have the evidence to put the person there. They have the evidence to convict this person. And this person, if he goes to trial, unless he settles for some sort of plea agreement beforehand, if he goes to trial, I am predicting that Tyler Robinson will be found guilty of this terrible, terrible deed. We don't like to think it's simple. We don't like to think that there's a simple answer, but often there is. And the simple answer to this is, he felt that Charlie Kirk was spreading hate. He was in a relationship with a trans, and he decided to take Charlie Kirk out. And he did it with a single shot. We don't like to think it's that simple, but oftentimes it is exactly that simple. But what do you think? Do you think that these wild accusations, this easy way to just blame the government for everything, will impact this case? Do you think that it may cause a mistrial? Do you think it could cause the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, being found not guilty? Do you believe that all this, that millions of people are listening to this crap every day, do you think that it's going to make a difference in the trial? I don't think it will. I think that justice will prevail. But I'd love to hear from you. Reach out with a shout out, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. So today we've been talking about the attack against the investigation of Charlie Kirk. Those who are trying to take this narrative away from what really happened and bring all kinds of speculation to cause doubt upon the case. But will it cause reasonable doubt that will impact the case? You tell me. charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Till this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert for the life you save. Yep, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag @CharlieCrimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you, so please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.